All right, so I'm going to be honest. I'm re-recording this intro because I did not do something very important. And that is, I did not speak about the Torah Anytime's campaign. And it was so important to me. I can't believe I forgot it in the beginning. I was just like rushing and started the class. And you'll soon see it. This is literally a post-recording for a pre-recording. But in any case, I do want to mention, because it's very, very important. Torah Anytime is coming up with a campaign to raise money for support for Torah Anytime. Torah Anytime does not ask for you for any money. It doesn't even ask for your donations. I am asking for your donations. Torah Anytime doesn't ask. It's a free service that you get. And not only that, there are rabbis that sit over here and prepare for hours, and they work really hard to give you content and kosher content that you could go and enjoy. And you can go and it can appreciate and grow in Torah. And might as well do a little spoiler, and Avot.ת and which is a spoiler for this class. But there's a lot of rabbis that spend a lot of time, and everybody that's part of Torah Anytime family, the part of Torah Anytime team, we want Torah Anytime to succeed. And I'm sure you, as a listener, also want Torah Anytime to succeed. So, as a personal ask for whoever listens, if you can please go and donate. You don't have to donate to my page, just donate. If you want to donate to my page, you're more than welcome to donate to my page as well. I'll be very, very grateful. Everything goes to Torah Anytime. And this is something that you want to be a part of. You want to have a schus in everything that the Torah Anytime does. You're talking about 18 million hours of Torah a year. You're talking about crazy numbers, right? You want to be a part of it. And to show as a Kar Satov, every speaker that you listen to, donate a little bit to, even if it's $5, $10, $18, whatever you're able to do, $1 million. I don't know what's your net worth or what's your value, whatever it is that you're able to do, give to each speaker that you listen to. Number one, it gives chazik to the speaker, because these how many people really give, because every speaker that has the page, they get a direct email on that you donated. My personal thing is I try to send a personal thank you to each and every single one. But this is something that if you utilize, it gives a chizuk to the speakers. It gives chizuk to Torah Anytime. Do whatever you can. You listen to 5, 10, 15, 20, 1,000 speakers. Give a little bit. Give even $1. Give whatever it is that you can to Torah Anytime. Number one, you're going to help Torah Anytime. Number two, you give chizuk to the speakers. And number three, you'll get eternal reward. So it's a win-win-win-win. It's a triple win. So check it out. Go to it's on Cause Match. I'm sure you'll see the links everywhere. Donate whatever it is that you have. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless you bekefal keflayim, with all the brachos in the Torah, with ad bli dai, that the amount that you give now, you should be able to give 10 times that amount the following year. Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining. Tonight we are learning L'Refuah Shlema to Avram Yaakov Ben Yael, and L'Refuah Shlema to Chava Bat Chai Esther. Also Leilu Nishmat Avram Ben Chaim Yehuda, and Leilu Nishmat Yecheskel Ben Avram. So tonight we are continuing the series that we started about a year ago on Pirkei Avos. It's such a shame that it's such a beautiful these Mishnahs is so beautiful, and people hear about it so much because so many people talk about it and be like, okay, I heard this already. What? There is so much that you can learn, and tonight is going to be one of those proofs on how you could have listened to so many classes on this, but you don't even begin to scratch the surface, and that's what we're going to tap into tonight, to see how many layers it goes into what these holy Mishnayos, these holy sayings of the sages teach us. So it's something that, the thing that gets overlooked the most, unfortunately, is when we think that we know something and we're like, okay, fine, we heard this, we spoke about this topic, we heard about this topic, we learned Sfarim on this topic, and we're kind of good in it. Let's try to find a different topic. The beauty of Torah is that you could learn it 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, and you'll still learn new things. But, I believe the way that we are going to present this series is something very different than than anyone else, and there's going to be a tremendous amount to learn from an historical perspective, from a character building perspective, from a Kabbalist perspective. We're going to go from all angles. So right now, because it's after Pesach and this is the season for Pirkei Avos, we are going to put the Kaveh Yashar on hold. We're going to do Pirkei Avos, and then eventually we're going to put this on hold. We're going to go back to Kaveh Yashar. We'll bounce between these two amazing series. Okay, so there's a little bit of a background that we need to give, because last year we were on the second Mishnah, the first parak of this would be the 9th class on Pirkei Avos, just to show you the depth, and I'm just barely scratching the surface. We gave already about this will be the 9th hour on not even 2 Mishnahs, just to show you how much you can learn on it. But we spoke about in the previous discussion on this Mishnah, which is the second Mishnah in the first parak, it was the background of Alexander the Great and Shimon hatzadik. Now, I'll have to give you a little bit of a recap on that, because it's been a long time, and we'll do that. But I want to emphasize how important it is. Backgrounds are so important. I'm not talking about this background. I'm talking about, when you're dealing with something. And this is just to give you an example of like why and how it's so important. Like one of the reasons that I started doing the hidden series. So the hidden series of Pesach, the hidden series of Sukkot, the hidden series of Purim, of Shavuos, of all these Yom Tovim, is because once you know the background of something, you have such a wealth of knowledge, of information, that so many things start clearing and it starts connecting the pieces. Because the way that most of us learn is that we hear a little bit over here, we hear a little bit over there, maybe remember something that we learned in school, maybe that, we listen to share on, a little bit on this topic. And the goal, and this is one of the beauties of learning, this is at least my, one of my pleasures, if I may, of learning Torah, is where everything starts, coming together. As a topic that I spoke in my shul on Pesach, the beauty of how everything connects together. That's when I get at least the enjoyment of such a high level of enjoyment of Torah, and that's what we're going to be doing tonight, Be'ezrat Hashem. So a big part of that is getting to understand the background. The reason why the background is so important. Slow down. When I start mixing words, that means I gotta slow down. The reason why the background is so important is it gives you a lot of information. So when you do, let's say when you get a background on a person, so the physiological, the psychological, the emotional, the intellectual, you're able to gain a lot of information. You know how to speak to that person, you know how to deal with that person. If it's an arrogant person, you're not going to gain by arguing with that person. If it's a shy person, you have to relate it in a different way. If there's a person with low self-esteem, you have to relate different. If a person only talks about money, you have to relate to that person, a little bit different. So, and especially this comes into great bit of information is when, let's say I'm speaking to somebody who, let's say, doesn't believe in God, or doesn't believe in the Torah, or doesn't believe in something that, something changed. And at one point they did believe, they did understand, and then at some point they didn't. Now, the more background that I could get on that person to realize how they got from point A to point B, I could better cater the answer that I'm going to give. The less background, you're fishing for the clues of what they want to hear. But because whenever someone asks a question, there's many ways, unless it's a mathematical question, and there's many ways to come to an answer, to come to the conclusion. If you know the origin of the reason of why that person is asking that question, then you can connect the dots and get them to the best answer that will best suit them. The problem is, and this is this is the difficulty of it, is that sometimes I try to get to the background of that person, and they don't give it up. Let's say, I'll give you an example. Someone comes to me and says, "Oh, I don't believe in God anymore. I don't believe in the Torah anymore." I'm like, okay, at one point you believed, and at a certain point you didn't. What happened? Walk me through it. Like, talk to me. Was there abuse? Was there this? Did you have a bad day? Did you have bullies? Did you have, let's get some information. So when I get information, we're able to cater that very, very smoothly. If I don't get information, sometimes people are like, no, there's nothing wrong. And there's always something. There's never a situation where someone is in a present state at a young age and then decides that they're going to switch their life. And I emphasize at a young age, because at a young age, that means that their mind is not fully developed yet. Their mind meaning that they don't know all the information. So if they were brought up in a certain way and they changed the way that they decided to take a different path in life, of course there could be many reasons, but the basic understanding, if you could talk about it, the foundation of it is that if a person is staying in a constant place and they're happy and they're satisfied and they're healthy emotionally in all areas, they're going to continue that way. If they are unhealthy, then they will veer from the path. That's at a young age. At an older age, okay, they could start thinking, they could start contemplating, they could start doing a lot of research, they could start learning, they could start having questions based off intellectual, concepts. But if a 22-year-old or a 25-year-old or a 27-year-old or an 18-year-old is coming to me and says, oh, by the way, I decided that I'm not religious anymore, I figured out everything that I need to know, I found some questions and I'm not religious anymore. That means that there is a disconnect in those 2 points. You didn't do all that research because it's not possible. So which means is that you wanted to come to the destination of becoming not religious anymore, and then you just found something to connect it of a reason not to be religious anymore, and then you filled in the blanks with whatever made you feel comfortable. But if you come at an age of you did a lot of research, then there's something else. So most people, when you're dealing with questions of like why they don't believe in God anymore, and this is specifically in those type of people. I'm not talking about people that were never religious and now they're trying to question. I'm talking about people that were there and now they left. So when there is something that was, the background will help you a lot to figure out where to take them. And this is just an example that I'm using based on what I deal with, but I'm saying you could utilize this in anything. People that have, bad relationships or bad understanding in, healthy understanding of parents or children or whatever. The list goes on and on. The more that you know about the background, the better that you can direct them to the right answers that they need. And this is very common in therapy. This is also a tactic that needs to be used. The more that the therapist knows about your background, the more the therapist knows about your trauma, of why you're going through, they can now better assist you and deal with it. So this is why background is so imperative, so important, and so crucial to understanding. And the more that we understand the backgrounds of things, the more that we'll be able to comprehend the subject, and the more that the subject will make sense to us, that things will just start plugging in. So let's give a little bit of a recap what we spoke about last year. So we spoke about Alexander the Great and Shimon hatzadik. So Alexander the Great, we spoke about his name kind of says it all, which like Alexander the Great, right? There's a very few of the Great that people's parents didn't call them, but actually came either from themselves, which is a narcissistic personality, or from like an historian perspective, because Alexander did accomplish a lot. And he started off at a very young age. He was tutored by Aristotle, and Aristotle tutored him in philosophy and medicine and scientific investigation and all different ideologies that were known at that time. So he's coming in with one of the best secular tutors in the world at that time. He was also his father was King Philip. King Philip, I don't want to go into the background of this too much because we spoke about it, in this class. But basically, there was many years of battles in Greece for controlling of Greece, and no one was able to conquer it. Even though there were a bunch of different Greece, like it's not countries, but different Greece areas, and everybody was fighting with everybody. And because of the terrain, it's very, very difficult, the mountains and the waters and the islands. Anyway, in any case, when King Philip went, his father, and he was able to conquer Greece. For 500 years, everybody was fighting, and King Philip was the one that was able to conquer and unite it all. So you could just imagine the ego that was going on in the home of Alexander the Little, before he became Alexander the Great. He was sitting over there, and his father was boasting on what he could do when nobody else could do. And this is what, as a child, this is what he took in. And at the age of 20 years old, his father, King Philip, was assassinated. And he became king at the age of 20 years old. And despite his youth, he took the throne very, very strongly. Like when people resisted him, he didn't try to go in the left liberal way and be like, okay, let me try to appease everybody. No, if somebody went, and I'm not saying this is the correct way, but when somebody went against him, he went and he destroyed them. He destroyed his opposition to the point that there was a city of Thebes that resisted him, and what he did was he completely destroyed the entire city. And that's, to just show the power and the strength, and people stopped messing around with him. he was also able to do something that nobody else was able to do for a long time. And before he conquered his big conquest, which was the conquest of Persia, he was able to conquer the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire until this point was the main superpower of the world. He was the one that was able to take down Persia, which means he was a king at 20. Nobody bothered, anybody that went against, his ego started very high and he just kept on piling. And it wasn't just the ego. He was very, his army was very strong. He had this tremendous ego that was coming along with it. And he had things that was substantiating it. He was winning every single war. In fact, he never lost the battle. And besides the strength, besides the wisdom that he thought that he had a tremendous amount of wealth. And this is, no one doubts the wealth that he had. Just to give you an understanding, when he when he went through the Persian invasion, when he conquered Persia, just the spoils from Persia was, according to this day and age, if we convert the currency into the value of what we have today's day and age, just from that one battle, from that one conquest, he made $1.6 trillion. And this claim, this is based off the 20,000 mules, the 5,000 camels that needed to carry the spoils. We're not going to get into all the details, but just to show you how wealthy that he was from one, again, it was the biggest battle, $1.6 trillion. They estimate his worth. There's a big range, by the way, of the estimate of what was Alexander the Great's net worth, but there is a opinion that it was about $32 trillion. So it used to be, you say someone had $32 billion, you would say with a B. Here's $32 trillion. That's, no one even can come close to even thinking about what that number means. So Alexander the Great, during this time, he represents wisdom. Told by Aristotle, he represents strength. He conquered everything. He did not lose a battle. He had wealth. He had success. He had everything going on for him. And this was the mindset of Alexander the Great. And this is what people aspire to. This is what people aim for, to be like someone as great as Alexander. At this point in time, this is when Shimon lived. Shimon was his Rabbi was Ezra. Ezra was, the Chazal tell us that if Moshe Rabbeinu had not come before Ezra would have received the Torah. Just to show you how high Ezra was. Ezra also formed the anzs, which we know was the sages with prophecy that produced. Just an example, the Shimon Esrei that we have today is from the anzs. So Shimon HaTzadik is coming from major like spiritual powers, and to take that a step higher, Shimon HaTzadik was also the Kohen Gadol. Now, he was the Kohen Gadol for 40 years. The reason why this is impressive because he was in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, the second temple. Just to give you an understanding, during the first Beis HaMikdash, during the first temple, which stood for 410 years, there were only 12 Kohanim Gedolim. There was only 12 high priests that officiated during that time. So in the 410 years, 12 Kohanim Gedolim. In the second Beis HaMikdash, which lasted for 420 years, 10 years longer than the first Beis HaMikdash, there were more than, listen to this number, 300 Kohanim Gedolim. More than 300. The first one was only 12. The second one was more than 300. Most of the people that served as Kohen Gadol, they were not fit for it, and hence they did not last the year. They didn't make even a year in the office. We're not going to get into the details of it. It's a different class, but they did not last the year. They were not fit for the job, and they did not deserve to have the job, and hence they did not make it. Shimon HaTzadik lasted in this time. I'm saying he was worthy for it. He lasted the full, we're not going to get into all the history. You can look into the previous class that we spoke about it. He was a Kohen Gadol for 40 years. And not only that, to show you the level of Shimon HaTzadik, the Gemara in Yuma, page 39a, brings a list of all the miracles that happened during the Beis HaMikdash. And when Shimon HaTzadik was nifter, when he passed away, the miracles happened, but occasionally some of them ceased, some of them happen occasionally, meaning that it just points to how holy, how great Shimon HaTzadik really was. And then, if with this background of information about Shimon HaTzadik, we have to ask, then how come out of the entire Torah, we have this great Shimon hatzadik. He's known as Shimon hatzadik. He was a Kohen Gadol for 40 years. He was a political leader. He was, coming from like the student that would have gotten the Torah had Moshe Rabbeinu not gotten the Torah. He was coming from such a path. Then why is it that we have only one saying from Shimon hatzadik in the entire Torah? There was no halacha, things from Shimon hatzadik. The entire Torah Shebaal Peh, we have one saying from Shimon hatzadik, and that's in the first parak, in the second Mishnah. That's all we got. Shimon hatzadik, shiarei knesses hagdala. He was from the remnants of the anshe knesses hagdala. Hu haya omer. He used to say, "Al shloisha dvarim ha'olam ha'omed." The world stands on three things: al Torah, al avodah, al gemilas hasadim. On Torah, on avodah, which is karbanas, sacrifices, but slash prayer, which we'll get to when we get to it, and gemilas hasadim, which is good deeds. This was his big statement that Shimon hatzadik said. Now, to take the step further, Shimon hatzadik was in a critical turning point in Jewish history. The Shimon hatzadik lived during the time when the last prophet died. The last prophet was Malachi, meaning that at one point, you know what a prophet was? A prophet was, you had any questions, you had any concerns, any issues, you went to the prophet, and the prophet was able to give you a direct answer, a clear answer of exactly what you needed to do. So we had pure clarity, and Shimon hatzadik lived during the time when there was clarity, and then there was all of a sudden no clarity anymore, no more prophets. There were no more prophets. And this is also, by the way, why we don't have and why we didn't need to have many sayings of Shimon hatzadik. We don't have, when there was prophecy, there was no machlokas, there was no arguments, because you just went to the prophet, and the prophet resolved whatever the question was. That you can't have like two different opinions when you have a prophet, and the prophet would say, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. Only afterwards, the whole, the intellectual process on how we learn, go listen to the previous class that we spoke about. I don't want to get too much into the details of it, but there was a huge critical turning point when there was no prophet, and now when there was a prophet, and now there is no longer a prophet. So you have over here, this is during the critical time when Shimon hatzadik lived. And yet, the Shimon hatzadik, when he came in, and his main statement, his magnum opus, his main thing that he said was the world stands on three things, on Torah, Avot, and gemilas hasadim. Now I would ask you, why is that the big saying? Okay, we know, you have to pray, you have to daven, and you have to do good deeds. Yeah, that's the big saying. What was so special about this three things that he said, not only is this so important, this is what the world stands on? So again, remember that he lived during the time when prophecy ended. He lived during the time when Alexander the Great was accomplishing a lot, and what he said, the purpose of the world, you know what the world stands on wisdom, on wealth, on strength. This is what the world stands on, and this is what Shimon hatzadik is now battling from the outside world. So you have from the outside secular world coming, know that you need the wisdom, the strength, the money. That's what means everything. Now Shimon hatzadik says, no, you're mistaken. It's Torah, Avot, and gemilas hasadim, and we see this play out in the Gemara in Tamid, page 32a. And the Gemara says that Alexander the Great went and asked the sages. He said, Ezu chacham, who is wise? Ezu gibar, who is powerful? Ezu usher, who is wealthy? Right? So Alexander the Great was coming to the sages, and he was like, guys, he basically was fishing for compliments. He's like, okay, you guys are smart. So who is a wise guy? He was waiting for them to say, yeah, you learned under Aristotle. You learned under the great Aristotle. Of course it's you. And that's what he was looking for. Ezu Agibar, who is the one who is mighty? They were looking like, Alexander, you never lost a battle in your life. You were able to accomplish, you were able to conquer what people never could dream to conquer. He was the Gibar. He was the strong, it does sound like Trump. He was the one that was able to accomplish a lot. Ezu Asher, who is the wealthy one? He's worth $32 trillion. He said, is there anybody wealthier than you? You know how many Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos he could put in his back pocket? But the Chacham did not answer that. He goes over to the sages, Ezu Chacham, who is a wise person. So he responds, the Chacham responds, Hayroya es hanailad, and threw him off. He's like, what? What? Hayroya es hanailad means someone who sees the future. That's who's a wise man. And then he's like, okay, Ezu Agibar, who is the one who is strong? He says, someone who overcomes his temptation, overcomes his desire, right? Each and every single one of us, we have desires. We get angry, we get lazy. We have desires to do X, Y, and Z. Speak, you know what makes you strong? You want to know what makes you powerful? You're able to overcome those desires. That's someone who's a Gibor. Then he's like, okay, let me pull out the last string. Ezu Ashir, who is a wealthy man? This you cannot deny it. $32 trillion in the bank, baby. You can't beat that. And they said, nope. You know who's an Ashir? Who's a wealthy person? Hasamech bechalko. Someone who's happy with what he has. Because if you have so much and you're not happy, then you're not content. You don't have that ashiras. You don't have that oisher. You don't have that wealth. So the idea that was going on over here is that in Alexander's eyes, he was projecting this. You want to be wise, you want to be strong, you want to be successful, this is what you need to do. And the sages were like, you're wrong. Don't let this infiltrate into the Jewish society. This is not what success means. This is, in fact, the Maharsha says, look at the first thing that they responded. The first thing that responded is, Ezu achacham harayes hanaylad. You want to, what's harayes hanaylad? Harayes hanaylad in the translation means someone who sees the future. But also, if you do the literal translation, harayes hanaylad, someone who sees hanaylad, the reason that they were born. The reason that they were born in this world. Says the Maharsha, you want to know what a wise person is? Somebody who knows why he was put on this earth. You think you are put on this earth to make more money? You think you are put on this earth to go and conquer different countries? You think that's the reason? That is what a wise person is. So this is the era that Shimon hatzadik was living in. Shimon hatzadik was living in a time when Alexander was pushing his ideology. And his ideology is, it's got to be money, it's got to be success, it's got to be conquering, it's got to be wisdom, it's got to be, these are the things. And Shimon hatzadik, no, that's not what the world stands on. That's not the reason that you are noilad. That's not the reason that you are born in here. Rather, you are born for what? For Torah, Avot.ת, and gemilas chasadim. This is what you will be successful in this world, is if you have Torah, if you have Avot.ת, you have the prayer, you have at the time of the Beis Hamikdash was karbanos, and you have gemilas chasadim, you do chesed. This is the purpose. This is the reason. So now let's try to delve deep into why Shimon hatzadik said these three things and how it's so imperative to everything that we do, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. It connects to so many aspects. So we're going to go through a bunch of different aspects. If you can follow with me, good. If you can't, try to. Okay, I'm going to try to go slow over here. But it's so beautiful when you see how many things connect to these three fundamental, basic, foundations of Judaism. So the Ruach chaim says, and this is a famous idea, this is an idea that we speak about in Kabbalah very, very frequently, in Hasidus also very, very frequently, that everything falls into three categories. Anything that you do falls, meaning either you do a good deed, either you do a sin. It's going to fall either to one of these categories or a combination of these categories. There's nothing that falls out of these categories. And these categories are, number one is thought, number two is speech, and number three is action. Thought, speech, and action. Anything that you do, sin, mitzvah, falls into either one or a combination of these two. And these are connected to Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, which is again what Shimon hatzadik said the world stands on, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. So Torah, says the Ruach chaim, is speech. Torah is speech. When you learn Torah, you're supposed to learn it out loud. This is the aspect of speech. You're supposed to give it over. Whatever. Torah is speech. Avodah, divine service, that is thought. Why is it thought? So explains the Ruach chaim, because when you have a sacrifice, when you give a sacrifice, if you have an improper thought, that can invalidate the carbon. It can invalidate the sacrifice. And in fact, the sacrifice, the prayers, again, when we say sacrifice, that was referring to prayers as well. Right now we don't have any sacrifice, so tefillos came in the place of sacrifice, and that is called avodat halev. It's a service of the heart. So this is something that is connected to thoughts. And finally, gemilas chasadim, that's action. So we said thoughts, deeds, and action. Thoughts is Torah, thought is prayer, speech is Torah, and action is chesed. These are the three things, and that is why it says the Ruach chaim. Shimon hatzadik came and said that the world stands on three things, because you want to know why? These three things, the thought, speech, and actions, they correspond to everything, and they're each connected to Torah, Avot.ת, and Gemilas Chasadim. The Nesivos Shalom takes this a step further, and we're going to do a lot of step furthers tonight, B'ezrat Hashem. So, the Nesivos Shalom says that this corresponds to three major elements that make up a human being. A human being, the three major elements of a human being is the brain, the mind, the heart, and the limbs. So the brain controls our intellectual activities, the heart controls our emotion, and the limbs, they translate our thoughts and feelings into concrete actions. So you have in-depth Torah study that you're using. When you're doing in-depth Torah study, you have to really focus. You have to really utilize your mind. When you're utilizing your emotions, then you're connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is connection? Connection, that's through the heart, that's through the emotions. And the limbs, that's the loving kindness, the chesed. So we said over here, you have Torah, Avot.ת, and Gemilas. So Torah, you have the Torah study, the in-depth Torah study. You have to utilize your mind, and some of these, by the way, correlate. And your emotions, you have the prayer, the tefillah, avoda, and the limbs is that you have the chesed, the kindness. Now, let's take this a step further. There are three essential human relationships. There is a relationship between man and God. There is a relationship, the second one, between man and his fellow man. And then there's a third one, which is a relationship between a man and himself or herself, a woman and herself. The avoda, prayer, divine service, this connects man to God. Acts of kindness, chesed, this connects man to man. Torah enables man to relate to himself, and we'll speak about this once we go in depth on Torah. The Maharsha takes us a step further. We're gonna keep on going. There are three avos. There's Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avram, he personified kindness, chesed. We all know that he had the outstanding hospitality. Yitzchak, he personified the avodas Hashem, the service of God. He was going to give himself as a sacrifice on the Akedah, and we said sacrifice and prayer. That's that's what took over. That's what corresponds, and this is what Yitzchak represents. Yaakov is described in Bereshit chapter 25 verse 27. He says, "Yaakov ish tam yoshev ayhalim." What is yoshev ayhalim? Says Rashi, ayhalim shel Shem v'shel Aver. He was sitting in the tents of Shem and Aver. Meaning, what was Yaakov doing? Yaakov was learning Torah. So Yaakov corresponds to constant Torah study. Yet Yitzchak corresponds to avoda, which is karbanos, which is tefillah, and Avram corresponds to chesed, which is kindness. And the Bas Ayin takes us a step further, and the Bas Ayin says that we know that the big sin, the big avera, the hatzadik, the sin of the golden calf, this trickles down to many sufferings to this day. The hatzadik, how do we rectify that? So the Bas Ayin says egel is spelled ayin gimel lamed. What is ayin? Ayin is avoda. Avoda is prayer. Avoda is karbanos. What is next? Egel. Aleph ayin gimel. Gimel is gemilas chasadim. That's doing good deeds. And finally, lamed. What's lamed? Limud haTorah. Learning Torah, meaning that you want to know how to rectify the sin of the chet egel, of the sin of the golden calf. That you do Torah, avoda, and gemilas chasadim. That goes, and this is why it's the foundation of the world. And we'll take it a step further with the Maharsha to take it to the home plate. Then listen to what the Maharsha says. Something so beautiful. The Maharsha explains to us. We know that there are three things: the harig val yavar. We'll do a little bit of a recap if you're still trying to follow along. So the Maharsha says that there are three things, Yaharik Val Yavar, meaning that you rather, if someone comes to you and says, sin or I'm going to kill you, you're allowed to do any of those sins except for the big three. And the big three are the big famous three. It's Avodah Zara, Gila Rice, and Shvichas Damim. In English, it's idolatry, serving idols, murder, and immorality. Those are the three things that you cannot do, and what you're supposed to do is supposed to get yourself killed rather than go and violate these three things. The generation of the flood, the generation of the Mabul, these people had sinned against these three things, Yaharik Val Yavar, and hence they were destroyed. They worshipped other gods. They had immoral practice, and they were thieves, which is the opposite, which was murder, which we'll soon see how it connects. But look how beautiful the Maharsha connects it. So we know that the world stands on three things: Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. The worship of other gods They were not. That's avodah. Avodah is the service of God. What's the service of God? It's either sacrifice or prayer. That means that you're praying to the right person. You're going to the right destination. So they didn't have that. They didn't have the world was standing. They didn't have one of these pillars. The immoral practice, that is the antithesis of the Torah. We know the Gemara in Kedushin tells us, Barasi Yetzer Hara, Barasi Torah Tavlin. I created the Yetzer Hara. I created the evil inclination. I created the Torah as an antidote, meaning that if you are overcome with temptation, if you're overcome with desire, you want to overcome it, go and learn Torah. That is what's going to go, and it's going to overcome it. So the people in the flood, they had very immoral practices, but they didn't utilize the Torah that they only had the Shabbat mitzvahs. Well, it was actually the time before that was by the only what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Adam, but they didn't utilize that. And hence they had immoral practice. And finally, they didn't have the chesed because they were thieves. They were stealing. So they didn't. We know that Shimon hatzadik, the world he says the world stands on three things: Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. They didn't have Torah. They were immoral. They didn't have Avodah. They were serving idols. And they didn't have Gemilas Chasadim because they were stealing. And when you don't have the three things that the world stands on, guess what? The world gets destroyed. The world collapses. And this is why Shimon hatzadik said this is what the world needs, and this is why the generation of the Mabul. This is why they didn't make it. Now we can begin to understand the things that Shimon hatzadik chose these three. There was a philosophical danger coming up at this time. Alexander the Great was portraying what was success really needs to be, the Greek ideology, and this comes, and we'll see that this Shimon hatzadik was already battling back then, and then it went all the way to the time of the Yevanim, of the time of the Hanukkah story, and unfortunately, it did become Hellenized to a certain extent. But we see over here that when we're reading Pirkei Avos and we're looking at Shimon hatzadik, okay, yeah, he said Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. Next, let's go to Gimel. Let's go to the next Mishnah. No. You know what Shimon hatzadik was saying? This is the fundamentals. Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. These are the three essential relationships. We have the Avodah that binds the prayer that connects man to God. You have acts of kindness that connects man to man. You have Torah, and that connects man to himself. And this corresponds to the three avos, the three foundations, the three founders of Judaism. The three patriarchs of Judaism is Avram, which was Chesed, which is Gemilas Chasadim, Yitzchak, which is Avodah, which is Tefillah, which is prayer, which is sacrifice, and Yaakov, which is Torah. And this is the three things, which is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And this covers all aspects, anything that you do, thought, speech, or action. Thought is Avodah, speech is Torah, action is good deed. It encompasses everything, meaning that this says Shimon hatzadik, this is the purpose. This is what you're here for. Don't listen to what Alexander the Great is saying. That is incorrect, because this corresponds to all the major elements of a human being: the brain, the heart, and the body. The brain, the intellect, that's the Torah. The heart, the emotions, that's the avodah. The body, the action, that's the chesed. And this is why it's better. You rather have to be killed than violate these two things. Idolatry, that's the opposite of avodah. Immorality, that's the opposite of Torah. And murder, that's the opposite of chesed. Because chesed, what's chesed? Chesed is to give. What's the opposite of chesed? To take away. What is the ultimate taking away? That's murder. That's taking away someone's life. So these are the things, and this is what Shimon hatzadik was saying. These are the foundations. You don't understand. This is what everything is based on. This is your relationship. This is your emotional connection. This is everything that you encompass, all your major elements. This covers all aspects of any good deeds, thought, speech, or action. It encompasses everything. The beauty of this is that this idea in many different levels you see throughout the entire Pirkei Avos. Many times you see these, they say three things and we just like glance over it, but we never connect, the dots. We never connect on how these are the three things: the thought, speech, and action. How it connects to everything. We'll see this many times in Meretz Hashem over Pirkei Avos, and this corresponds to idolatry, Avodah, Gil Arayos, and Shvichas Damim, idolatry, immorality, and murder, and hence to this Mishnah, which is Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. And just to give you a few examples on how it relates to other Mishnahs, I want to take the last few minutes that we have to be able to go through some of the other Mishnahs. And in Meretz Hashem, we'll go through it more in depth when we get to that, but just to show you on how deep Pirkei Avos actually goes. So there's a Mishnah in the fourth parak that Rabbi Elazar HaKapar Omer, that Hakina Taiva v'Hakoivod Moitziin es Adam min ha'olam. Kina Taiva and Kavod. Okay, I'm doing it from memory, and I'm thinking if I'm mixing up the order. But the Mishnah says that there are three things that remove yourself from this world. Remove, keyword, Moitziin es Adam min ha'olam. Kina, Taiva, and Kavod. What's Kina? Kina is jealousy. Taiva is desire. Kavod is honor. Let's go and let's break this down. Kavod, honor. What is honor? Honor is when you feel like you deserve more. And this is what the Chazal tell us, that if somebody gets angry stems also from honor. You think you're arrogant. That's as if you served idolatry. Why? Because you think you deserve everything. Really, what the honor is only to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So someone who's chasing after honor, they're worshiping themselves. They're worshiping themselves. That corresponds to Avot.ר, of the three things of Yaharik Val Yavar. That's idolatry. And that corresponds to our Mishnah, which is Avoda, which is that you serve God, the correct God. So meaning that out of the three things in the Mishnah and Pirkei Avos, the first one covered, that goes against idolatry, and that goes against avoda, which is in our Mishnah of Torah, Avot.ת, and Gemilas Hasadim. Next is taiva, desire. Desire, from the three things of Yaharik Val Yavar, is immorality. You're not allowed to do immorality, and that's very easily connected to desire. And we know the Gemara in Kedushin says, "Barasi Yetzer Hara, Barasi Tara Taflim." I created the Yetzer Hara, and I created the Torah as the antidote. So we see over here that the three things that the Mishnah and fourth Mishnah, Perkei says, "Hakina Taiva Kavod Metzinas Adam and Ha'olam." We see over here is already corresponding to two out of the three of the things that we're speaking about tonight. And finally, Kina, jealousy. What's jealousy? Jealousy, one of the causes of murder is jealousy. Someone goes and sees that this person has, whatever the reason is, there's some sort of jealousy, and leads, unfortunately, to murder. What is the antidote to murder? That's Gemilas Hasadim. When you do something good for somebody else, so you're not going to get jealous. No, I want the person to succeed. I'm lending him money so that he could thrive in his business. I'm going and I'm helping him because I want him to succeed. There's no jealousy in that aspect. So we see over here that Kina, Taiva, Kavod, the three things that remove a person from this world, that corresponds to Avot.ר, which is Kavod, which is honor, taiva, which is immorality, and murder, which is jealousy. This removes a person from the world. What do you mean it removes a person from the world? Because he doesn't have the three things, the three pillars of the foundation, which is of Torah, Avot.ת, Gemilas Hasadim. Torah is immorality, that's taiva. Avoda, that's honor, and that's idolatry. And Gemilas Hasadim, that's jealousy and murder. So we said in this week, listen to this, I'm going too fast, I get too excited, I'm sorry, I gotta slow down. Whenever I start connecting things, my mind starts racing a little bit faster. So we'll go a little bit slower over here, because look how beautiful this is. So we said in this Mishnah, and just follow along with me over here, because it's so beautiful. We're going to go through like a few Mishnahs with this, like this. So the Mishnah in the fourth, we said in our Mishnah. Let's start with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says the world stands on three things: Torah, Avot.ת, and Gemilas Hasadim. Listen to how beautiful it is that it connects to what the three things that remove a person from this world. So we said that this is the foundation, and if you don't have that, then obviously remove it. What you remove it, you take the opposite of that. So we said Torah, the opposite of Torah, that's immorality. The opposite of Avot.ת, that's kavod. The opposite of Gemilas Hasadim, that's jealousy, because you're not giving to somebody else, you're jealous about that other person. And in fact, we know that one of the things, we'll save the evil eye. We're going to get to that soon. We're going to get to that a little bit later. But we see over here the three things that Rabbi Elazar says in the fourth parak of Pirkei Avos, that three things remove a person to the world, corresponds to the three things that are the foundations of the world, and it corresponds to the three things of Yaharik Val Yavar, and corresponds to the three things that are based off everything, which is thought, speech, and action, which correspond to the emotions of the mind and emotions and the actions. And we see how everything is so connected. There's so many layers over here. How is this not so beautiful that you don't want to jump out of your chair and start dancing? Look at how beautiful it is and how deep the Torah is. But let's take it a step further. Let's go to another Mishnah, the Mishnah in the fifth parak. The fifth parak, the Mishnah tells us you can either be a student of Avram or you could be a student of Bilam. What is a student of Avram? Student of Avram, you have to have three character traits. Number one, you have to have an ayin tova, good eye. You have to have a nefesh shefela, which is an undemanding soul, which means is you don't focus on desires. And then you have a ruach nemucha, meaning you have humility. I'm simplifying it. When we get to it, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll go into it more in depth in it. So we see over here that you have three things to be a student of Avram Avinu: a good eye, don't focus on desire, undemanding soul is the literal translation, and humility. We just said in the previous Mishnah, in the fourth Mishnah, that the three things that remove you from the world: desire, honor, and jealousy. If you're humble, that's the opposite of honor. If you have an undemanding soul, you're not chasing after desire, that takes care of desire. If you have a good eye, that takes care of jealousy. So it means what we have over here is the fourth Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. It says that three things remove you from the world: kina, taiva, and kavod, which is honor, desire, and jealousy. The exact opposite of that is to be a student of Avram Avinu, which is to be humble, which is the opposite of honor, which is to be not chase after desire, which is after immorality and desire, to have a good eye, which is the opposite of jealousy. And just to clarify that, so which means is that in this fifth Mishnah, I have to make a spreadsheet to show you guys. It's so beautiful when you look at it you see the full picture there. But when you have humility, that takes care of honor, which takes care of idolatry, which is the foundation, which is of Avot.ת, which is in our Mishnah, serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu either through sacrifice and praying to the right thing, right? Because if you have arrogance, if you have honor, that means you have idolatry and you're worshiping yourself. The next thing, which is Torah in our Mishnah, that in the fifth Mishnah, in the fifth paragraph, that tells us that you have you're not chasing after desire. You have an undemanding soul, a nefesh shafela. That corresponds to the desire. That corresponds to immorality, and that corresponds to going and learning Torah, because we know Barsi Yetzirah, Barsi Torah Taflin. And then finally, we have a good eye. A good eye takes care of jealousy, which prevents murder, which is the origin of it all, is Gemilas Chasadim. So look how beautiful it is if you work the way backwards. So if you have Avot.ת, if you're serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you won't come to honor. You won't come to chasing after honor. You'll have that humility, which means you'll be a student of Avraham Avinu, and you won't come to idolatry. If you have Torah, then you won't have that desire. You won't come to immorality of Yaharik Ve'al Yavar, and then you're going to be a student of Avraham Avinu because you have Nefesh Shafela. If you have Gemilas Chasadim, so you won't have jealousy. And how do you make sure you don't have jealousy? Student of Avraham Avinu, you have an Ayin Taiva, you have a good eye, and hence you're not going to lead to murder. And that is the student of Avraham Avinu. The same Mishnah says the flip of that, the exact opposite of that, 180 degrees of that, is the student of Bilam Maharsha. Meaning that if you have an evil eye, then you have jealousy, which can lead to murder, which is the opposite of Gemilas Chasadim. And you have a Nefesh Rechava, you have a greedy soul, you're always chasing after desire, so you're going to have immorality, and you're not going to have the Torah. And if you have Ruach Gavaya, the final thing, which is arrogance, so that means you're going to have idolatry, because you're going to have your honor that you're chasing after, and hence you won't have the Torah. So if you have Torah, Avot and Gemilas Chasadim, you'll be a student of Avraham Avinu, and you won't be a student of Bilam Maharsha. And this is the origin of it all. Let's go through one final Mishnah before we wrap it up. I thought this was going to be a shorter one, but okay, it's a little bit longer than I thought it would be. But anyways, the third parak, the first Mishnah, that tells us look at these three things and you won't come to sin. I'll say it in Hebrew, I'll translate it, and then we'll see how it connects to everything. Me'ayin basa, where are you coming from? Metipas rucha, from a putrid drop. Where are you going to? L'makam afa rima v'saleat, a place full of worm and maggots and ashes. V'lefnei mi'ata asa litin din v'chashban, and who are you going to give judgment in front of? Lefnei melech malchi amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to give judgment in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Meaning that Akavi ben Mahal, again, we're going to speak about it B'ezrat Hashem in depth when we get to it. But Akavi ben Mahal says, you want to know three things that are going to prevent you from sinning. Look at where you come from, where are you going to, and who you're going to stand before in judgment. So, let's try to break this down. Where are you coming from? Where are you coming from? I mean, how can you serve someone? How can you serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You have to know where you have to know where you came from. You have to know the origin. This is Avot.ת. This is the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You want to serve him, you have to know who to serve. This is Avot.ת. This is obviously corresponding to the opposite of idolatry, which is serving something else. Where are you going to is the next thing that this Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says. Where are you going to? Where are you going to? How do you know where you're going to? You need to learn Torah, right? If you don't learn Torah, you know that there's schar and einesh. You know there's reward and punishment. This is the essence of Torah, and this is what's going to take you over for immorality. And finally, where are you going? By the way, this is my shtickle of connection, so you don't have to agree with me on this one. This is my how I connected it together. This Mishnah. Where are you going to give din v'cheshbon to? Where are you going to go and give a accounting before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before God? So what does that mean? You think you're a good person, right? People say, I'm a good person. I do good deeds. I check that off. Really? How do you do good deeds? Do you good deeds in your eyes, or do you do good deeds to Torah's eyes? You look at all the liberal movement that's going on, the left liberal movement, they think that they're great people. They think that they're the best. But really, these are Rishayim, these are the wicked, the lowest of the low. Then why are they so wicked and why are they so low? Because they think what they're basing it's the idea that morality stems from their own mindset, that they think this is what's the moral thing. They don't go based on what God says is the moral thing to do. They just based off whatever moral understanding that they're holding in their infant style of knowledge and wisdom that they possess at this stage in their life. They can come in thinking that they're very, very righteous people. I'm a great person. Are you kidding me? I protested. I stood over there and I said, death to Israel, and I did everything genocide. I said all the right things. Come on, God, you gotta let me in. Why? Because in their mind, this is what they think. This is the right thing to do. This is their giving the benefit of the doubt. They think the right thing, and they're not just straight out wicked, which is probably many of them are. But in any case, they think they're a good person. You know how you define if you're a good person? If you're a good person in God's eyes. Right? Not in your eyes. Meaning that if you're a worker and you think you're a good worker and your boss thinks you're a terrible worker, then guess what? It doesn't matter what you think at that point. The guy who's writing the check, he's going to decide if you're good. If you're not producing in his eyes and you think you're producing in your eyes because you woke up and you walked into the office, that doesn't mean anything to him. If you're producing and if you're making the business money, then okay, then you're valued at something, then you're worth something. But if in your own mind you decide, I'm worth a lot, who are you to say anything about it? So if in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes and mindset, which is the Torah, if you're a good person, then you're a good person. You're a good person in the boss's eyes. If you're a good person in your eyes, that means nothing. And this is why the Torah is so important. So when you have Gemilas Hasadim, and we'll speak about that, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll speak about Gemilas Hasadim. When you have Gemilas Hasadim, what does that mean? You're considering yourself a good person? How do you know? You know who you're going to stand in front of judgment? You're going to stand in front of judgment. Does God think that you're a good person? Or do you think you're a good person? Meaning that we said there's Torah, Avot, and Gemilas Hasadim. And here, the Akavi ben Mahal says there are three things that prevent you from sin. Know where you come from. Know where you come from, meaning that know who you're serving. You're coming from, you're right under the even though here is referring to Metipas Rucha, but you're coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have to know where you're serving. Your soul is coming from where are you serving? Where are you going to? You're going to a place that's full of worms and maggots, meaning how do you learn? You have to learn Tzchar V'Einish, you have to know what the Torah says. And finally, you want to know, you're going to stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You think you're a good person, you think you have Gemilas Hasadim, you think you did good deeds because you donated to some college or whatever it was that you donated to. You have a good deeds. Are you a good person to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes? And if that's the case, then yes. So this is what you have. The Torah, Avot, Gemilas Hasadim. It corresponds to Avot.ר, Gil Arais, Shvichas Dam, that takes away that. It covers your thought, your speech, your action. It covers everything. And now we can begin to understand that Shimon hatzadik, he was known. Not too many people have the title tzaddik. He was Mishiarei Knesses Hagdoila. From the Anshe Knesses Hagdoila, his Rabbi was Ezra, which would have received the Torah had Moshe Rabbeinu not come before him. And he said three things the world stands on. We say, okay, three things. You don't understand how deep this is. Torah, Avot, Gemilas Hasadim, that corresponds to so many levels. That corresponds to your thought, your speech, your actions. It corresponds to your emotions, your mind, your deeds. It corresponds to all your relationships between you and yourself, between you and your friend, between you and God. It corresponds to the three patriarchs of the three of us, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, to Torah, Avot, and Gemilas Hasadim. It corresponds to so many levels, and it takes away Gila, Rash, Shvichas Dam, and Avot.ר. It takes away Kinat, Taiva, and Kavod. It has the ability to overcome so many things, and that is why one of the reasons that Shimon hatzadik, he comes in and he's battling the secular mentality. He's battling this thing of Alexander the Great. Now we understand the background. Now we can understand a little bit of what was going on over here. During this time, he says, no, this is what the world stands on. This is what we need to focus. And this day and age, how true does this stand? How true does this stand? These three big ones. These are the things that we need to focus on. Torah, Avot, and Gemilas Hasadim. That's Torah and praying and doing good deeds. This is the foundation of the world. And we realize when we break it up, we realize what we have to focus on: our thoughts, our speech, and our actions. These are the focus that we need to have. B'ezrat Hashem, next week, next class, we will go into a little bit of the depth of what Torah, Avot, and Gemilas Hasadim. Basically, we'll go to it. This was an introduction to an introduction to an introduction. I think this is the third introduction for this Mishnah, and then we can begin to understand the Torah, Avot, and the Gemilas Hasadim. With that, we'll say Kapitel Tehillim for the soldiers in Israel and for entire Klal Israel, and then we'll open up to questions. So as usual, we say Kapitel Lamed, chapter 130. Say it along with you, whether you're listening to it live or whether you are listening to it as a recording. Don't shut off yet. Listen to it. Say a Kapitel Tehillim for Klal Yisrael. Shir Malais Mima Makim Karasicha Adonai Adonai Shema Bekaili Tiana Aznecha Kashuv Vais Lekol Tachanunai Im Avaynes Tish Maria Adonai Mi Amoid Ki Imcha Aslicha Leman Tivarei Kivisi Adonai kifsa nafshi v'lidvarai ha'ichalti nafshi la'adonai mesharmin la'bayker sharmin la'bayker yachel Yisrael el Adonai kim Adonai yachesed v'harbei ma'ifadus v'hu yiftas Yisrael mikol avon esav achenu kol beis Yisrael Hanisunim batzara v'shivya ha'imdim bein bayam u'bein bayabasha hamakam yirachim aleim v'yetziam mitzara l'ervacha u'ma'afela le'ara u'mishibud legula hashta ba'agala bizman kariv v'neimar amen. All right. Looks like we don't have any questions, which is beautiful. Either that means you had no idea what I just said, or you're super clear. But I am going to go positivity, and I'm going to assume that you know everything that I'm talking about. But until next time, may you all have an amazing, amazing, successful week.